What's up, Internet? Kevin here with TLD, bringing you guys some more E3 coverage, this time with Sony's press conference recap. Now, I have to say, while this was a step up for Microsoft, it definitely had a strange pattern of going from awesome to, oh god, why, back to awesome again. I don't think anyone will argue that the best two moments of the show were definitely the intro and the outro, starting with the announcement of a brand new game from Quantic Dream, the creators of Heavy Rain, a game called Beyond, which did show off some of the game's storyline as well as introducing its lead actress, Ellen Page. And then for the end of the show, we finally got to see some full gameplay of Naughty Dog's next game, The Last of Us. Which honestly, while I was watching, I was starting to wonder which parts may or may not have been pre-scripted, but either way, it's really hard to argue against the idea that Naughty Dog has become the master of cinematic action in video games. I mean, just looking at how some of the combat was depicted and how you were able to brutalize some of your opponents, it was just not something you're really used to seeing in video games, at least not with that kind of tone to the background of it. Now, the show did have a couple other high points. We finally got to see some gameplay for the new God of War title, God of War Ascension, and we got to see some more in-depth gameplay for their Smash Bros. Clone, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, as well as having two new characters announced for it, Nathan Drake and, more excitedly, Big Daddy from BioShock. Another interesting thing to note is that a good part of the show is dedicated to being Ubisoft's press conference part 2, showing gameplay for both Assassin's Creed 3 and Far Cry 3, albeit some new stuff that we didn't see during their press conference. Namely, for Far Cry 3, we got to see some of their new co-op gameplay, and for Assassin's Creed 3, we got to see some new at-sea battles, which basically gave the game an entirely more pirate feel to it. I'm not sure how well it's going to mesh with the rest of the game, but in and of itself, it did look very interesting. Now, while all of these sections were very interesting and entertaining for the press conference, there was one very giant gap in the middle that was just extremely boring. Sony basically decided that they weren't done beating the PlayStation Move horse to death, and have now decided to find a new interesting way to basically kill it more. It's called Wonderbook. It's basically a way to read a virtual book with the PlayStation Move and then act out mini scenes from it. Their idea being is that video games in and of themselves aren't already immersive. You need to look at an imaginary book first and then play a mini game and then read from the imaginary book some more. It just overall looked really awkward and uncomfortable. Even the people playing the demo didn't actually do a great job of it, and that just made it look all the more painful. Now, aside from that one major low point, Sony did have a few other announcements. They tried pushing the Vita a little more by announcing a few special titles for it, most of which were spin-offs of other big names, like a special version of Black Ops, and a side story to Assassin's Creed 3 featuring a female protagonist. It definitely was interesting to watch, and hopefully this will help get the Vita a little more acclaim, but there's just not a whole lot they're pushing for it aside from that. They also finally announced that PS1 classics will make their way to the Vita, including with the release of Final Fantasy VII. So overall, the press conference was more or less good and bad. It just went through waves of being really good and then really terrible, then back to really good. It also looks like Sony has made very good bedmates with Ubisoft by not only pushing special exclusive DLC on the PS3, but also even having a special bundle for PlayStation where you get a PlayStation 3, a copy of Assassin's Creed 3, and pre-installed DLC unique to the system. Now, this was the last major press conference for today. We had Microsoft in the morning, which I already talked about, and there were a few in the middle of the day with EA and Ubisoft, which both had their ups and downs. Definitely more ups for Ubisoft than for EA. But that's the end of today. Tomorrow we'll get to have Nintendo in the morning, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more interesting info for them to end E3 on a much stronger note. As always, guys, thanks for watching our videos. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, make sure to check out my recap of Microsoft's conference, which I did earlier this morning, and stay tuned for tomorrow morning when I'll give you my thoughts on what Nintendo announces. And if you want to hear my up-to-date responses to what's going on at the conference, make sure to follow me on Twitter at TLD_Kevin. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with some more E3 coverage.